we're all traumatized. That is like the nature of my game. We're human beings. To be human means to be somewhat traumatized. We're here to be traumatized, right? We're here to suffer what life has to offer us and learn how to deal with that. And we deal with that in our nervous system. So that is the parasympathetic nervous system is the system of relaxation. The sympathetic nervous system is the system of excitation. Homeostasis is the balance of these two systems. And when these systems are imbalanced, they tend towards an imbalance in the sympathetic nervous system, which is we are, I look at it as like we're jacked up, we're overly excited, we're got too much going on in the brain. Now, some people do get too relaxed, and some people do live a life where they're, in like Ayurveda, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, right? Some people are fiery, some people are heavier and more relaxed, some people are more depressed than others. But from my perspective, living a human life, right? Living a life as we live it, which is we have thinking brains that react to stimulus in a particular way. What I have found in teaching and in teaching people to walk and helping people with pain relief is the people who live in homeostasis are pretty few and far between. And I don't want to say that as this alarming, horrible thing. It's just sort of a reality. We're all kind of, for one reason or another, overstimulated and, like I said, jacked up. And what does that mean? For the body to work well, for the system, for the nervous system to work well, we need to go from one to the other. You need to let the sympathetic nervous system kick in, you need to let the parasympathetic nervous system kick in, and they go back and forth. In my workshops, when I'm talking about this kind of stuff, I often use the image of running for a bus. And it is March, and I am completely ready for spring. So I'm going to tell a story about summer, right? You are in your house, and let's say you live in air conditioning. You are temperature controlled, and everything's going well with your morning, but you have to leave, and it's 90 degrees outside. The second you get outside, and it's 90 degrees, your body is going to go into some sort of shock, right? It's going to go into sort of a rest. You can be like, whoa, it's so freaking hot. What am I going to do? It's not a conscious thing. This is all happening autonomically, unconsciously. So the brain registers this heat, and what it does is it kicks in the sympathetic nervous system. So I like to look at the sympathetic nervous system. It's in sympathy with your fear, worry, need, right? So it kicks in the sympathetic nervous system to make us sweat and lower the internal body temperature, which is a great thing. And it does that. And you walk a half a block, and the sweat kicks in, and the body temperature kicks in. So your body temperature is a little regulated, so you can stop sweating. So that's the parasympathetic nervous system will allow you to stop sweating. But then all of a sudden, the bus passes you, and you have to go get that bus. You have to run. What happens? You start sweating and you start breathing heavier. And to accommodate that, your sympathetic nervous system is again gonna, you're gonna start sweating in response, and that's a sympathetic nervous system action. Okay, great, you get the bus. You make it to the bus, how cool. So you relax. Basically you go, I made it. You're online, 4 or 5 people. By the time you get to the front, maybe your breath is regulated again, you're back a little bit, and the parasympathetic nervous system is trying to help you relax out of that sympathetic action of running. Great. All is good. You get on the bus and the air conditioning is on. Bam. You just go through the whole process again. This is a beautiful thing. This is the way it works. This is the way the body is designed. And that's a pretty benign 5 minutes of your life. So that's what we want to have happen at all times. But we're more sensitive than that. And some of us are way more sensitive than others. So when it comes to different scenarios, scenarios that aren't about going to get a bus. We could talk about emotional scenarios. We could talk about a scenario of parents that are one parent who is mean to you, one parent who allows that meanness to happen, and what does that do to your nervous system? And the way, I'm not going to go into it too much, but the way I look at it is, if let's say you have a mean parent, which is a generic, because this can go and it can be a mean boss, it could be a bad boss, doesn't have to be mean, it could be an environment that you shouldn't be in, right? What happens when you put yourself into an environment you shouldn't be in? Um, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in the same way I said it kicks in when you walk outside and it's hot. But what if that environment doesn't change, right? So you go hot, your body temperature regulates, so the parasympathetic nervous system can kick in to let you relax. Then you get to the bus, and again, you relax because the breath regulates, the body, the temperature regulates. But what happens if you live in an environment, or you enter into an environment where the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, which is a healthy thing? It's a response to worry or fear or whatever, and it kicks in, and you don't leave that environment, whether that's in your home, whether that's at work again, whether that's walking down the street in a place where all of a sudden you don't feel comfortable, driving in car traffic and getting into an argument with someone on the whatever, right? What happens is the sympathetic nervous system can kick in and not shut off. It can take over and basically shut off the parasympathetic nervous system, and it does that as a survival mechanism. And then when it gets really bad, we get what I call stuck or caught in the sympathetic nervous system. And that is where so many of us live. And what do we do to get out of it? There are endless techniques to get out of it, but one thing is you kind of have to acknowledge that you're in it, right? You got to go, all right, I guess I get it. I live in a sort of heightened state of awareness. And again, some people are way more sensitive than others. So some people are debilitated by this heightened state of awareness. Those are my clients. Those are most of the people I'm working with, people in chronic pain, people with trauma, people with car accidents that were just too intense to deal with at the moment, and many, many years later, they're still not dealt with. Again, emotional stuff. So we get stuck in the sympathetic nervous system, and we need ways to get out of it. And you don't always have to, address the root. You don't always have to address like what it was that put you there. You can have techniques for just getting out of it, right? So what I mean by that is, I am 57 years old. I am a New Yorker through and through, with the exception of 5 years in the 80s. When I lived in Boston and New Jersey, I lived in Brooklyn my entire life, right? I loved Brooklyn. I said I will never leave Brooklyn. I liked Boston well enough. It got small. I liked Jersey. It was close to New York, and cheap, beautiful apartment. But, figured I'm living in Brooklyn the rest of my life. And I'm a pretty chill dude. I mean, I'm got my stuff. Everyone's got their stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm fairly mellow, right? So living in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn is an intense place to grow up. It's a great place to grow up. I'm Brooklyn proud. I never say I'm from, it's Brooklyn. Brooklyn rules. And there are things about living in Brooklyn that are kind of intense. We lived in a house, we lived in an apartment, we lived in many different places. Last place my family lived was an apartment building, and it's not a joke to say that there's no parking in Brooklyn. It's not a joke to say that Brooklyn is very crowded with people. It is not, Brooklyn is loud. Brooklyn is intense. It's New York. It's the, New York, New York. It's the greatest place on earth. Blah, blah, blah. It's New York. It rules. It's Brooklyn. Never thought I was going to leave. And, my parents passed away, and my mother-in-law lives in Cleveland, and we adopted a dog in Brooklyn who was sort of broken emotionally. And this dog couldn't handle Brooklyn. So, of course, I adopted a dog with a broken nervous system, with a dog that just lived in its sympathetic nervous system. It was one of the most amazing things to see. We adopted it, we bring it home, and within days, the dog cannot handle Brooklyn, the sound, the smell. She would go out. She got housebroken pretty quickly, but she'd go out, do a business, and pull to go back in. She was a freak, darting to get away. It was so intense. We hooked up with a trainer who helped a little bit. But anyway, we went upstate one weekend, and the dog's not so unhappy. So the dog's kind of relaxed. Um, this led to me moving to Cleveland. All right, so I'm Brooklyn born and bred. Never thought I'm going to leave Brooklyn. And then the crazy thing that happened is 6 months into living here in Cleveland, which I loved right away, immediately, right? Just right away. We moved at the end of the summer. It's fall. It's beautiful. 6 months into living here, I realized I am so different than when I lived in Brooklyn. I am just so much more relaxed. And in fact, I am much happier, right? So, one, there's no traffic here. No one lives in Cleveland. Cleveland is not a successful city. I make my living outside of Cleveland. It's great for me to live here. I wish Cleveland could have a revival. It's not, it's on hard times, right? There used to be 100,000 people 30 years ago or 40 years ago, and there's now 50,000, which means there's no traffic. And we live in a house with a garage and there's parking. You never have to look for parking. Do you know what it's like to live in Brooklyn and look for parking for 20 minutes? Never have to look for parking. There's no traffic. The entire city is designed in the most beautiful way with green spaces. Everywhere you drive is wide open. I can be hiking 15 minutes from my house. And Brooklyn's beautiful. And Brooklyn has Prospect Park, where I went for an hour every single morning of my life with my dog or dogs, right? 15 minutes from where I live here, I can be in a different set of woods. Cleveland is surrounded by these metro parks. Anyway, the point being, my nervous system, I am so much more relaxed than when I lived in Brooklyn. And that's not because I have dealt with my emotional traumas, because I have plenty of them. And it's not because I've done the deep work. It's because I changed my environment. And I changed my environment. And that change of environment for me was just really profound. It really served my brain and body. But I want to make a point that I have, in the course of 10, 15 years I've been doing this and working with clients, and there are plenty of people I've said before I moved here, you got to chill out. And if you live in a city, move to the country. And in truth, that works for people. It worked for me. I didn't do it for trauma release. I didn't do it to get out of my head and my brain and my pain. I just did it because, my dog needed it, my mother-in-law's here, and whatever. It was good. But I have clients who years later tell me, I moved. And I said, oh, that's so great. Why'd you move? And they're like, you mentioned it one day. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'd say that to everybody. You moved to the country. And for some of those people, it served them really well. But I also learned over time, you know what? It doesn't serve everybody. That I know people, not because I said move to the country, they moved to the country and it failed them, where I would say, maybe you want to move to the country. I go, no, I tried that. Made me worse. So environment is one way, but we can also do simple things like meditate. Meditation changes your brain, right? Meditation is all about getting out of the sympathetic nervous system and into the parasympathetic nervous system. And I never mean to shut off the sympathetic nervous system. We're always looking for homeostasis. It's just that the nature of life and the nature of trauma and the nature of existence for everybody, I believe, it has nothing to do with if you're traumatized or in pain. Life is heavy. We are clueless as to navigate the brain we have and the world we live in and the interactions we have and the technology we have. We're just a mess, right? So in that sense, we all need some relaxation. One of the things I'm teaching in posture, and it'll be in the SOAS workshop, the way we stand is like a sympathetic nervous system reaction. We stand in a way that elevates the rib cage and shortens the breath and shoves the breath up into the body for different reasons, so I'm not going to go into those too much, but for different reasons we do that. And making simple changes to your posture, getting your pelvis better aligned and your rib cage better aligned over the pelvis. changes your breath and deepens your breath. And you take 18 to 20,000 breaths a day, right? You take a lot of breaths every day. And if those breaths were 5% better, I usually say 10%, right? If those breaths were 5%, 3%, 1% better over the course of 18,000 breaths, that's going to help you stimulate your nervous system. So exercising correctly. All of my stuff is universal. We don't sit well, we don't stand well. Look, I can just fix my posture. That's how I was sitting. This is how I'm sitting, much better. We don't sit well, we don't stand well, we don't walk well, we don't sleep well. Change your sleep, tie your legs together and keep your knees together, and that will change your nervous system, because when you sleep, that's how we heal the nervous system. That's how we heal the sympathetic and parasympathetic. I don't want to go too much into sleep. Super key. Improve your sleep 5%, and you change your nervous system. Improve your breath 1%. Improve the way you exercise. So when you breathe poorly in your habitual things like standing and walking, I promise you, you're breathing that way when you're exercising. So change the way you exercise a little bit to change your breath to get more into a relaxed state, and you're going to access more of the parasympathetic nervous system. So there are just many, many ways. I'll finish chatting again about the workshop I have coming up on Saturday, which is SOAS Release Party, my favorite workshop, and I've been doing it for a lot of years, and it's live online. It's 4 hours, and you get a recording of it and the ebook, and that is release work, which is laying around doing pretty little, right? Laying around and not doing too much in order to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, basically by using gravity and using these tiny, tiny movements while keeping the body super relaxed. So relax yourself. Figure out your way. Maybe release work isn't for you. Maybe you changing your posture isn't for you, but there is some way. Taking long walks, biking. Just figure out your way to stimulate more parasympathetic nervous system response in your life, and you'll be really well served by it. All right, thanks so much. Have a great day, and be well.